So I'm a reader and a writer, and so I really love books. I will bring in books probably every time except for this time because it's a little overwhelming to just throw a bunch of books on the table. But a big part of what we're going to be doing together is really trying to figure out how to use sort of the principles that you learned in the shift workshop, the principles that are not in any way extraordinary. It's just iterative processes of how do we think, how do we plan, and how do we stay as creative as we can for as long as we can without making any commitments. Well, that sounds like dating. So you're gonna date, and think about it. I mean, that's not a bad analogy, I suppose. But when we think about design thinking, one of the big reasons that design thinking is so powerful is that it allows you to stay in that creative space of not saying no to anything for a much longer period of time than you normally would. Normally, you've set a timeline for yourself and you're like, I have to make this amount of money by Friday, and so I gotta make decisions, and it doesn't matter whether they're good or bad, they just have to get me to the next step. We're gonna try and keep you out of that space for as long as we can on purpose so that you can get more information, so that you can figure out what you're really actually trying to do. And the other really big principle that all of you talked about is starting with people. And starting with who you're trying to do, whatever it is that you're doing for, is connecting back to who are you making your ceramics for? How are you serving the community with information, with food, with clothing and self-worth, and all of this stuff is coming up. And that's a big key of design thinking, is to start with the people and just to make sure that we're thinking about who our humans are that are going to be using our stuff. But then we got to get down to the reality of, can we make it happen? Is it financially affordable for us to make what it is that we say we're going to make? Do we have enough time to do it that still meets that financial price point that somebody is either willing to pay or wants to donate, or however your business model works? And that means that part of what we have to do is be in a space that's pretty uncomfortable. So you're going to spend the next 4 weeks at least, if not the next 4 months, really being uncomfortable, because you're not going to have clear answers. You're going to end up with more questions than you had when you started, because you're going to start to unravel whether your original idea actually is the idea that makes sense, and the one that is going to hit the people in the way that you want it to impact, and whether it's financially feasible, and whether it's possible for you to actually do it based on where we are and the constraints that we may have. So what we're hoping to do is to really keep you in that special space, because we're all trying to do this together, of being uncomfortable, because change is very uncomfortable, and most of us would prefer for answers to be very clear and have a step. I mean, even us creatives, we actually like often a step-by-step process that helps us understand the chaos that is in our lives. So we're gonna work on being a little more loose in that way. The other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build on the principles that we worked on in the shift workshop, which is that we don't have to have $1 million idea. Now, we may have $1 million idea that comes out of this, but we certainly don't want to start there, because that's way too much risk for us from time, and certainly when it comes to money and resources. So one of the things that we discovered, and hopefully you all have these experiences in your lives, and will have more of them as you start to keep working in this sort of way, is that you discover that other people are doing the same thing that you are. So we had done all of this piloting of the AIR program, and realizing that, hey, small is better in our small towns. Like, we don't need $1 million, we need $5,000. We can actually find $5,000. Why are we thinking about $1 million? And just starting to realize some of these smaller principles, and all of a sudden one of our younger committee people came to me and said, Beth, there's this book called The Lean Startup, and we just did it. And sure enough, here we had, as a bunch of goofy creatives out in Colorado, had been practicing all of these lean startup principles that are now the it thing in the business world, which is how to bootstrap your business, how to prototype as early as possible so that you are just making a small version of your idea of yourself and getting feedback early on and staying in the iterative design process as long as you can so that you don't overcommit, you don't, mortgage your house, you don't overreach so far that you end up collapsing. Instead, you sort of get to weave and just sort of ease your way into where the answer is as it unfolds. So that's a big part of what we're going to be doing, is just this iterative process of starting with an idea, starting to build it. For coders, this is where you start coding until you discover what is breaking in your code. But for all of us, that's exactly what this is. It's the same thing. We're going to build a little bit, we're going to get some information, we're going to learn, and we're going to go back to our original idea and figure out what needs to shift, what needs to change. Can the radio station could it be only online? Is that, or does it need to have a physical radio wave that people can pick up when they drive by your house?
Literally park in our driveway.
So learning that stuff and doing those, we're going to be doing experiments for the next 4 months together to figure out what's the right answer and where's the sweet spot of where our idea needs to go in order to get it off the ground. So we're definitely trying to start as small as we can. Once we start to get you into prototyping, after we focused on what is our purpose, what is your mission that you're really trying to accomplish, what's your biggest vision that you wish would happen if your project goes forward, we start there. But once we start to actually build that out, some of you are going to have some dramatic changes in your ideas about how they're going to unfold, about what the money is that's required, about who the people are that are required. I guarantee you that some of you are going to have a moment where you go, oh crap, not unlike ones that you may have had in the shift workshop. Oh crap, what about insurance? Oh crap, wait, that's going to break our budget for real. We got to start over in a different way. The other thing that happens that's really interesting, particularly when you have a good dynamic group that's working together, is you're going to riff off with each other and you're going to discover, wow, this idea that I thought was going this direction, actually, I really want to go over here because I've gotten enough feedback that this makes so much more sense in this strange direction. And so that's part of why we want to spend time with each other together, because that can be scary and confusing, and how do we do it, and is my idea bad? Was it awful? Did I just fail? That is not what is happening here. It's an evolutionary process that is fun and painful. So, as is everything about life. So here's what we're building on. Some of the things that we do here are designed to be functional and easy and sort of make it clearer that business is not a mystery. It is actually pretty simple. But the other thing that we use is this venture canvas. You have a copy in the way back of your book as well. And you certainly have these online. You can fill these out as many times as you want. You have them digitally. You can do whatever you want with them. But, sometimes it's good to do things that other people understand. And that's certainly when we get to our marketing strategy. We'll certainly talk about that a lot. But here's a way to imagine, how do you crystallize what your business is all about in as small and clear and concise of a way as possible. Now, for me personally, I do not find this helpful in that it's just it's consolidating. It's so small that it's like, is this really meaningful? But in the business world, this is a thing. So we need to sometimes know how to do the thing that makes us able to show up at the right meetings and talk some jargon. So this is a little bit of the jargon. This is your creative venture canvas, but all it is the story of your business. You're going to have your mission and vision. That's where we're different from normal business ventures, is we don't bother necessarily with a mission and a vision in quite the same way and the depth that we will. But then what is it? What the heck is it that you're doing? What is the value of it? we're gonna spend a bunch of time on this in the next 2 sessions. What is the value of what you're doing? That's actually a somewhat disturbing conversation sometimes, when you discover that people don't value what you value at the same level that you value it. And that can be a hard, realization moment. And better to have it now amongst friends than to have it when you're standing out in front of the world saying, here I am, buy me. And all of a sudden no one wants it, and you put it all out there. So this is a way to sort of get at that piece a little bit sooner. We're going to cover your customer segments and channels for how to get your products and services out. We're going to do a marketing strategy. We're going to have a financial description that explains what your business model actually is. And that's going to include your revenue streams and your costs. How much does it cost to make what it is that you're making? And then a little bit of a timeline. So that is all we're going to be doing, just that, for the next 4 months. And that is a big task in some ways. Then, one of the things that we're going to do at the end, as we talked about, is make presentations. Now, this is, for some people, the reason that they won't go and do a class like this is because they're afraid of the presentation part. And I'm here to tell you that you too can get beyond that. I am secretly very shy and also an introvert. But sometimes the fact that I want to save the world is willing to overrule the shy and scared part of me. When I was a freshman in college, I took a job working for a political action group that was trying to save the environment, and I knew that I was really shy and frightened, and so I was like, I'm going to do this. But I became a canvasser, so I knocked on doors and asked people for money. Now there's really nothing worse than that, but it was a really good way to get over talking to people who you don't know and learning how to read people like that, because you're basically like, a vacuum cleaner salesman, only for the environment. So I could feel good about it because it wasn't a vacuum cleaner, it was, do you want clean water? But wow, it's amazing what we can do when we put ourselves up to the task. That said, one of our early Evolve artists is a woman named Jennifer Ivanovich, and she really struggled with speech. It was a difficulty for her to imagine doing a presentation, so she did a video. And that is an absolutely fine and appropriate way to handle a presentation under the right circumstances. And I'm going to show the video to you just to show how much you can make happen even when you know that this is not your strong suit. She had amazing materials that went along with her whole proposal and presentation, and she has skyrocketed, has won big major awards, and has a whole line that you will see in just a moment.
Adult, Carrie wouldn't leave her house or seek help for fear